Welcome to Senior Living Marketing Perspectives. I'm Debbie Howard with Senior Living Smart, and today my guest is Maureen Longoria. She is the co-founder and CEO of LivNow Relocation. Maureen and her team are changing the way families navigate later in life transitions. LivNow was invited to participate in the AARP's Age Tech Collaborative Accelerator Program, which helped to secure AARP as an early stage investor. This program has given Maureen access to valuable data, including some of the topics that we're going to talk about today, including the baby boomer wealth transfer, the impact of the slowing real estate market in key regions of the U.S., and the impact that solo agers will have on the senior living industry. So welcome, Maureen.
Thank you, Debbie. It's great to be here with you.
It's great to have you. Well, let's dive into the first topic. Well, boomers are once again disrupting everything, and senior living will be no different. So take us through kind of this great transfer of wealth and kind of the implication to the senior living industry.
Yeah, it is. It's a really fascinating time, and there is going to be a very significant transfer of wealth over the next 10 to 20 years, and that's to be exact, 84 trillion of wealth will be transferred to the next generation. Just on behalf of the baby boomers, we're not even talking about that silent generation. I think a stat that's even just as fascinating as that is the amount of baby boomers that are coming out of the real estate market. 13 to 14 million baby boomers will be leaving the real estate market for rentals, senior living, or for passing away in the next 10 years. That's a lot of people leaving the real estate market. So while the market is really tight right now, that's going to change as these baby boomers step away from that market and move into, like I said, rentals or senior living communities. But there's only so many senior living communities for them to move into, aren't there? I was at a conference, an Interface Active Adult conference about a month or so ago, and they mentioned that we have about 2 million units and we need to build 1 million more to get there. And then ironically, I was at the Chicago Interface Conference yesterday, and a bunch of the CEOs on the CEO roundtable panel were saying we're just not going to be able to keep up. It's too late. We haven't built enough. We're still not building enough, and we're not going to be able to keep up to house all of these people. So it's going to be a really fascinating time. We're seeing a lot of other tech companies pop up to support this. None of them actually having to do with the transition part of it. A lot of tech companies are popping up to handle the state settlement part of it. Because when they do pass away, then, anytime somebody passes away, there is a lot to be done when it comes to settling the estate. And so there's a lot of tech companies popping up to support them during that transition, knowing that this is going to be a very significant amount of people transitioning during that time.
Yeah, I think I saw a statistic that said that the demand would exceed the supply of senior housing by 2030.
Easily, yeah, absolutely. And they were all talking about that yesterday, and they're all just kind of scratching their heads like, yeah, but it's too late. Like we missed the boom to build for it. What I find fascinating though is we're not seeing a lot of for-profit development going on right now, but we are seeing a tremendous amount of the life plan, not-for-profits expanding their communities. I think I don't know how many, but I mean, it's a really good amount that are expanding. The ones that have the wherewithal to expand on their campus are, I think, taking a very serious look at how they can do that if they're not figuring that out already or making plans for it already, because they're in a nice position to be able to do that. But the for-profits, they just don't feel like the numbers aren't penciling out still.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we're hearing a lot on the not-for-profit side for the expansion. If anybody who has land is looking at it, as really an opportunity to serve more older adults. And it's so fascinating because, I spent my career on the for-profit side of the industry. And so that's always been my frame of reference. And it's always like more and more, faster, faster. We need more leads and more tours and more move-ins. And it's just a constant energy around that. And now that we're doing marketing in the not-for-profit space, the problems that they're bringing us from a marketing perspective are completely different. They're like, how do we manage people on a 10-year waiting list? How do we manage 500 depositors? And, how do we keep people engaged? So a completely different set of issues, but they definitely have the interest. They have the waiting list. I think that's probably the difference is they're looking at expansion. It's like, do we have the market? Do we have an addressable market that matches what we have? Well, if you're sitting there with a 10-year waiting list that's 500 deep, it's a very different position.
1,000%. So the panel I did yesterday was the C-suite for sales marketing, but we did have a CFO on there, Bob Karn from Allegro, and then we had Gail Morgan from the Mather, Jay Hibbard from Covenant, and then we had Bobby Petrus from Priority and Andrew Eggins, who just started a company, Evolve. So we had a nice mix of for-profit and not-for-profit, but the conversation was always very different when I was talking to Jay and Gail compared to the for-profit rental. It just looks different. The biggest issue for the for-profit rental really for them was closing the back door.
Yeah.
That's their biggest issue right now. And so to your point, and then the life plan communities were dealing with wait lists and how to support them, and how they were more concerned with how do I change my messaging to address the baby boomers and Gen Xers, because that's literally who their target market is at this point. Whereas somebody like Priority, his target market is adult child, moving their parent in. So very different conversations, very different marketing that goes along with that, right? But fascinating story Gail told. She literally had a deposit from a couple. He was 67, she was 59. They were going to move in, but they had to wait 2 years because they still had somebody in high school.
Right. Yeah.
But they want to move in. They love the lifestyle that a life plan community is offering, because it's all about wellness and health. And so it is, to your point, the marketing is completely different across the board for them, and the problems that they're solving for are very different as well.
Yeah. It's so interesting. If you've seen a Mather community, you'd want to live there too.
Oh, trust me, I want to move into that Tyson's one. It's unbelievable.
It is. It definitely is. Well, I think that's all really interesting. And so much of this new kind of market in the boomer, this is the first generation with a significant percentage of solo agers. This is a whole new demographic that's coming in. Can you talk a little bit about the definition of the solo ager, and then how they're different, what they're looking for, and really how can senior living reach out to this demographic maybe in a different way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. People don't, in my opinion, we're not talking about it enough, because this is really going to be, somebody did throw out a divorce stat the other day, but they didn't really still dig into what this looks like. So a solo ager is somebody that's aging solo, no kids, no spouse. So it's not just no kids. Like, I've met a lot of people that didn't have kids but were married, and then their spouse passed. So that number is about a little over 2 million based on the stats I've seen, and it's going to quadruple. And actually, Joy Laverty is truly the expert when it comes to this conversation, and she's the one that's educated me. She's amazing. But that number is going to quadruple in the next 10 years to over 8 million. So that means that's a big problem, not just for senior living. Like, how are we going to address supporting them, but actually as they pass away too, right? Who's going to support them there? But in my opinion, they're going to need community more than anybody, because they don't have those family members. So moving into a life plan community or a rental community is an ideal situation for them as they age out, to be around people, to be able to have the support that they need. But then there brings the question, like, if they pass away, who's going to handle their estate? And again, estate settlement, it can take people, I mean, literally days and weeks of time to settle that. And that's why we're seeing some of these technology companies pop up to settle that. But who's going to help them make that transition? So they choose a community, right? And now they've got to make that transition. They've still got to organize, downsize. They're usually in a position they can't go up in their attic or start taking boxes down in the top of the garage. Stuff has been there for a while. And who's going to help them? Who's going to be looking out for their best interest? Who's going to make sure they're working with a reputable mover who's insured? Who's going to make sure that the realtor is a reputable realtor and they've gotten all the information they need to comparative market analysis to make the best decision for themselves, so they maximize their equity out of their house, because that's the money they're probably going to need to take care of themselves, right? So I think that the communities are going to see these solo agers moving in at significant rates, and they're going to need to be providing them with more services, more support, than what the communities are accustomed to providing their incoming residents with, because they won't have those children to help them. They won't even have a spouse. And, they can't lean into these nieces and nephews. I mean, we even hear it with adult children. I don't know how I'm supposed to help my parents with this. I've got a job, my wife has a job, and our kids are busier than ever, So that's going to be a fascinating dilemma that I think communities, I don't hear them really talking about, but I'd love to see people start talking about a little bit more and what we can do for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know who can help them. LivNow Relocation can help them.
Yes, we can.
Because I mean that's really your sweet spot, right? So
Yeah.
you complement and support really the communities because they don't have the time to be finding the right resources, finding out if they're insured, vetting them, and then having the level of touch points with an older adult that's making this transition to just give them confidence, let them know that they're supported, right? Once we get that deposit, we've got to go. We've got to go and help the next family in. So talk a little bit about kind of that service that you offer, and just an overview of Live Now, just so people understand that there is a resource out there to help.
Yeah, thanks. Well, there's two testimonials that were received, and I'll just quote part of each. And this, I think, summarizes us really well. You were the calm in the storm for me.
Yeah.
And thank you for being there to answer my endless questions. And that's what's different between us and then the community having to manage that. Because even if they do find a couple of reputable suppliers in the local market that they work with, that they still can't offer that incoming resident one point of contact who's a relocation expert, who can be the calm in the storm to take the stress out of the move and answer their endless questions. And that's what we bring. Our Live Now Relocation Specialist takes it off the plate of the sales team, and we introduce them to the right suppliers at the right time, giving them choices of suppliers, but they know they've been thoroughly vetted. So any suppliers they choose, they have a peace of mind knowing that they've been vetted and they're a quality supplier, but then they know that Live Now is that objective advocate for them during that process to answer all their questions, to be their real estate and relocation expert, guiding them along the way and making sure that they're not, a lot of times the community will give them, well, here's a list of providers that we work with that are great suppliers. That's great, but there's a lot of inertia that goes into picking up the phone and calling a supplier, leaving a message, as compared to them answering the phone because the supplier is calling them because Live Now told them that they would like a call from that supplier. Looks very different. The inertia is very different to pick up the phone and answer that call that is coming compared to just reaching out and calling somebody to explain what you need help with. So, we're there to make sure everything is going smoothly and take the stress out of the move. It's as simple as that. And the beautiful thing for the community is now they don't have movers calling and realtors calling and senior move managers. They've got Live Now providing them with a community update as needed. So in real time as needed, or at the very least on a weekly basis, they can go into our Live Now mobile platform and see what happened with that move during this week. And they have access to all that information, what suppliers they were working with. So the community is still in control of the process. They've just been able to lean into someone like us who can manage that, but they have complete visibility into all of it. And it provides them a way to organize this too, because they can go in there and see, oh, we've got these people on Live Now's, on the wait list working with Live Now to get themselves starting to get ready. These people, the moves have closed. Oh, we've got these moves coming up this month. It's complete visibility to them to this transition process that they've never had before.
Yeah, I would have loved that when I was doing community sales,
Right?
because it was a lot of time and you wanted to take that time, because you'd worked so hard to build that relationship, but trying to juggle that, all the new leads coming in and having to run over to the house to help them pick furniture or bring floor plans and measure, it really wasn't sustainable. And when my mom transferred in and I was handed a bunch of business cards or a list of moving companies and things like that. And she was out of state and in the hospital, and I was running around. And then they didn't answer their phone. Nobody picked up a call. I filled out forms on the website. Nobody called me back. And it was just so stressful. So I'm so glad to know that there's another option. So as we look at solo agers, so they'll definitely need more support. They're not going to be able to rely on those kids and do all the stuff that we did moving our loved ones in. But how do you think, how are their needs different, or how can senior living be more intentional or proactive in attracting kind of that solo ager demographic?
I think by just letting them know that their services don't start when they walk in the door. So the minute they tour, if they find out they're a solo ager, that is the exact time to say to them, we know that maybe this transition might feel overwhelming to you. That's why we partner with a company like, LivNow or whoever they partner with, right? Because we want to support you every step of the way. We want you to feel confident in your decision and all the decisions you make to get here as you go along. And I think just by doing that, it will take such a huge lift off of them because that's a big part of it. I talked to a woman, I was doing a presentation in Pennsylvania, and she lived in Florida, and her daughter was in Pennsylvania. That's why she wanted to move there. So she has a daughter. But as I talked to her before I did the presentation, she said, I don't know how I'm supposed to time all this. When do I put my house on the market and after it sells, and then how do I coordinate the movers? It's completely overwhelming. And she has a daughter that I know is going to want to help her, but she's still thinking through, like, how am I supposed to do all this? Right. And that wasn't even just about like what suppliers I pick. That was really for her about how do I time all this and make it work? And that's what was stopping her. And so when I got through explaining, that's what we're here for, to help you put that timeline in place. And we'll make sure you're not forgetting something along the way, like to book the mover. We'll make sure that if you're using a senior move manager down in Florida, that we're making sure that you're connecting with this, that you've talked to a senior move manager, you're comfortable with that one in Pennsylvania, and that senior move manager is going to be there to support you, and they've provided you with an estimate already, right? So we're going to be the ones to make sure that she's not dropping any balls or forgetting about something that might be important. And then just answering the endless questions, that come
Yeah.
up. Being there to answer all those questions, I think that's really a huge part of it. Can you imagine if they went to the sales team with all the questions? Our team spends hours on average with a resident. Just our introductory call is half hour to 45 minutes on average, just to gather like their story. What's their situation, to help them start putting a plan in place. And then we make sure too, they just take one piece at a time, so they're not feeling overwhelmed. Okay, let's start here and let's have this meeting. After you meet with them, let's regroup. Okay, great. Now you've picked your senior move manager and you guys are starting to do organizing, downsizing. Great. Do you feel like you're ready to meet with some realtors to get an idea of what your home's worth and how long it's going to take to sell? Wonderful. I'm going to have 2 of them call you tomorrow. The ones that we just talked about that you would like to hear from, they'll call you tomorrow. And I'm going to send you an email with all their contact information. So you can see where they get a peace of mind. Okay, now I've got an email with all their contact information, but they're going to call me tomorrow, and I'm going to pick up the phone and schedule an appointment with them. Then I'm going to talk to my relocation specialist again. So it's just, when I say slow, it moves much more quickly than if they did it on their own, but they don't feel like it's moving fast. You know what I mean? It's just moving in their time.
And how different is the relocation in a needs-based senior living, like assisted living and memory care, which usually happens quicker? It's maybe more of a crisis, a little bit more urgent, versus somebody who's planning. Maybe you're working with a community that's doing an expansion, and they know that those units aren't going to come on for a year and a half. How do you work differently with those types of scenarios?
Yeah, great question. It is very different. Obviously, if they're moving into assisted living or memory care, usually it's an urgent situation. We've gotten calls on a Friday afternoon and moved them in on Saturday. And
Yeah.
it's usually just a handful of things the family picks what's going to go with them, right? So we can coordinate that. And we have local providers that will do those very small moves. And they've done them for us. And they actually do the internal moves for us too, because a lot of communities lean into us for those internal moves from independent to assisted or whatever it might be. And then from there, we work with the family to manage then going through the home and figuring out what's going to be donated, what they want to keep, what they're going to do with things, if things need to be sold, and then getting the home on the market. So then we'll generally work with the family. The nice thing about that is then the family isn't going through everything in the house and trying to manage that, because we'll introduce them to a senior move manager that can do that on their behalf. So now they can spend their time selling their loved one into the community. You and I talked about that before. I know that was a thing for you. And
Yeah.
if you could have that time back to just be there in the community with your mom, making sure that she was settled, giving her a peace of mind, knowing you're there with her, that's everything. So that's that scenario. And a scenario in an expansion or maybe a wait list, usually what we do is we'll have that conversation. And in expansion, we know that the time is coming. It's a little bit different with a wait list. We don't know when, but we do talk to them about, but let's get some stuff done now. So if you get that call, you're not scrambling. You've already done your downsizing and organizing, right? And you've already met with some realtors to get an idea of who you might want to list your home with and what you'll get for your home. Maybe some things that needed to get done to your home. So when the time comes, you're ready to get it on the market, right? And in an expansion situation, we know we've got a set period of time. So like, where do you want to start? What's important to you? Some people will be like, you know what? I want to sell my home today. I want to downsize. I'm going to get a storage unit. I'm going to move into my summer home. And then I'll move from my summer home. We'll empty the stuff from the storage unit, and we're going to worry about selling my summer home later, or whatever it might be. Everybody's story is a little bit different. So in an expansion or a blue sky project, a new build, we look at every scenario, knowing that this is the time they need to target moving in. It's March, April 2026. Okay, let's move backward from there. What do we need to get done? And then start working on those things.
Yeah, and then kind of at the end, at the exit, right? I thought the hardest thing for my mom was after she passed was going back into that apartment and having to go through everything. It was very difficult. So would have loved to have somebody, you know, be able to help with all of those details as well. So lots of opportunities to support families really throughout their experience and use these services as a differentiator. I think most of the time, you know, I think where the missed opportunity is a lot is we're waiting until somebody deposits to tell them about all these great services. We should be shouting from the rooftop in pre-tour and in first interactions to say, hey, when you choose our community, this is all included. Like, this is our white glove concierge service. Because there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of competitiveness out there, and we all need that advantage. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus we generally will move that process along much more quickly once they know that they have the support. And then they'll most likely they're in agreement at tour to talk to someone like us to find out how we can support them. Then they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to meet with a senior move manager. I didn't understand how they could help me. That would be fantastic. And now the process is starting. Whereas before they were saying to the community, you know, I just got a lot of stuff, so I need to start working on my downsizing. I'll start with my picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like all of our clients are wanting to extend that, you know, that length of stay, because as we look at, especially on the needs-based side, you know, the shorter the sales cycle, if you're just working those urgent leads, the shorter the revenue, the shorter the length of stay, the more risk, the more liability. It's not what it doesn't really work well for anybody in that scenario. But if we can get people in earlier, proactively, before there's an event or a crisis, you know, you're going to have that happier resident, that longer stay. A lot of our not-for-profit clients are like, we want the younger, older senior, you know, and they know how many years they have to have them in independent living before they start tapping into those needs-based services, which are more expensive in a life plan community. So the more we can overcome objections and shorten that, you know, lengthen the stay, but also shorten the decision cycle, that's kind of the you know, the sweet spot where everybody wants to get to.
1,000%. We talked about that too on my panel yesterday. The acuity levels are increasing for everybody. You know, and I talk about when we do presentations, we start with, what's your why? Why are you here? Are you tired of making dinners for yourself? Would you like to make some new friends? Would you like more activities in your life? Are you tired of the rising insurance costs and real estate taxes? They're all raising their hands. You know, would you like a lifestyle like this? They're all yes. Okay, so let's remember that. Now let's talk about the downsizing. That's what's stopping you. We all know that, the process of making that transition. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about solutions. And now let's go back to our why. Okay, now we've given you some solutions. We're offering you some support. Let's go back to your why. Let's not wait. Let's move in 5 years too early and not 5 minutes too late. Somebody said that to me once. I'm like, that's really good. It was a resident. I'm like, that's really good. I'm going to use that. But so one of the things we were talking about yesterday is, yes, the higher acuity levels, we want to get them in earlier. That will help get them in earlier. But we were talking about the back door, and Andrew Agans, with his company Evolve, he told me he's focusing on that transition process because he really believes if they have a stellar experience as they move into the community in those first 60, 90 days, they have an ambassador that, is introducing them to people, and they're getting involved, and there's something waiting for them. So they feel very welcome and wanted. He feels like that's what's going to close the back door for them in a significant way. And I'm like, I agree with him. I think that will make a big impact.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's, different stages of kind of strategy on the marketing side. And we start with, brand marketing, right? We have to have awareness. We have to differentiate the brand. Then there's growth strategy, right? How are we going to grow? How are we going to get, more leads or tours or deposits or move-ins? And, how are we going to help our clients grow? But then the people thing that most people are not thinking about is the customer strategy. And a good customer strategy starts with, when people, choose a brand or choose a community, how are we start creating a consistent experience across the brand at every location, rather than leaving it up to each individual community to try to figure out what is their onboarding program, new resident welcome program. So we automate that. We have like automated countdown to move-in day, right? Where we're communicating with them right after they make the decision. We're sending out, thank you for choosing us. We're so excited to welcome you to our community. Here's some helpful resources, right? Connect with LivNow Relocation. There are concierge service that we've selected just for you to make all these transitional elements easier. And then we actually build out the first at least 30 days to surprise and delight new residents with coming, tickets for the dining, a housewarming party, a gift certificate to the spa because they're probably, tuckered from having moved in. And it's things can all be done kind of through an extension of lead nurturing, which is really new resident welcoming, and 17% of all in the for-profit needs-based care, 17% of all move-outs happen in the first 30 days. You want to close the back door?
Yes.
Make sure that the first 30 days are really well orchestrated, because if people are not successful in that first month, they're going to go to a competitor, they're going to go back home because they just never had a sense of belonging. And it's very hard to recover from that. So if you have happy residents, you create great experiences, they will leave you wonderful reviews and testimonials, and they'll also participate in your resident and family referral program. So I'm glad to hear that there's some awareness and people are speaking on panels about creating, being proactive about orchestrating and creating that experience. We don't see really enough investment. Most people are investing in the lead gen side. And while that's great, you got like Axe Retirement that gets 50% of their move-ins from resident referrals. 50% unpaid referrals. Those are your best, they're the cheapest, they're exactly what you want, but they're very intentional. I think you work with them, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're very intentional. And to your point, though, you guys are brilliant at that. You have defined that for the industry. Like everybody should be following what you put into place, Debbie, because and to your point, most of it is just CRM, and then just setting it up like, okay, this is our standard protocol. Somebody arrives, there's a basket in the room, there's somebody to greet them, like just standard things. But to your point, a big part of that lift can happen just through the CRM, making them feel loved and cared for. You guys have been absolutely brilliant in doing that. And yeah, Axe has done a phenomenal job of getting those referrals. And I need to connect Andrew with you because, like I said, he's looking at that. And yeah, it's really, it's just putting that process in place. But I haven't come across any other communities that work outside of you that have done something like that.
Yeah, I remember I was on a panel with Axe, and they actually have a 365-day plan for every single new resident. That's how seriously they take it. They're not just thinking about short-term 30, 60, 90 days. They're really about really orchestrating and creating a one-year experience. So it's working.
It is working. I've never seen people more loyal to communities than the Axe residents. Someone tried to talk me into putting my name on their wait list.
Yes.
I was out there. A cute couple moving in.
Yeah, it's always scary when I'm out doing like a community visit or a client visit, and the resident asks me if I'm moving in. I'm like, oh, geez.
Like, I mean, it happens to me too. I'm getting over it at this point. But I said to the couple, I'm like, I still got one in college. I can think about wait a couple of years.
That's right, exactly. Well, you did bring up the real estate market. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
last thing I wanted to talk to you about. So we've kind of been, riding this wave of, escalating real estate values. And so many seniors do, that's their long-term care insurance policy. They've had that
Absolutely.
house for 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of times it's paid off. And, they're hopeful that that's going to fund their future senior housing and care. So give us a little insight into, what you're seeing out there in the market and maybe a little bit about the impact to the senior housing industry.
Yeah. So there was a lawsuit that was settled with the National Association of Realtors. It might even go back 2 summers ago at this point, I don't recall, or something changed last summer. And it changed the way commissions are paid to the buyer's agent. It used to be that the seller's agent would agree with the seller how much commission would be paid, and then they would split that commission with the buyer's agent, and the seller's agent would determine how much they would pay the buyer's agent. And all that information was in the MLS, so everybody could see it. So after the lawsuit, they said no longer can the seller's agent determine what the buyer's agent commission will be. They just negotiate their own commission with the seller. And that's fine, but then it leaves the buyer, who, and a first-time buyer, really doesn't have the wherewithal to have to pay a buyer's agent. So that was very concerning for everybody and very confusing. So what's happening now is the seller's agent is saying to the seller, when a buyer comes with their agent, are you in agreement that you would like to compensate that buyer's agent so that you can make sure that you're getting the most people looking at your home? You can be in a competitive situation because the buyers really aren't going to want to pay the buyer's agent. So it's still happening in the way it used to, but now it's not transparent. So it's very confusing to our older adults that maybe haven't sold a home in 20 and 30 years. So much has changed because of technology. It's not like it was when I bought my home 25 years ago, where it was a piece of paper with all the stats on it, right? And you went to all these open houses. It's changed so dramatically for the older adults. So that in and of itself, and then you add to this confusion. Well, I don't understand. Do I pay the buyer's agent, but I don't say that out loud? I don't put that in the contract. You know what I mean? So we're spending a lot of our time helping them understand all of that so that they're clear. But in the meantime, the real estate market continues to be extremely strong in most parts. So for instance, still Philadelphia, crazy enough, New York. Chicago's market is still pretty strong. But you will find pockets even within those strong markets of things slowing down for a variety of reasons. And then there are other parts of the country where it is slowing down. Austin, Texas is really tough right now. Las Vegas is tough right now. Florida is a nightmare, and it's for different reasons. Florida, what happened was between the hurricanes and the rising cost of insurance, that was really a problem. But recently, they put in a new law. When that building collapsed in Florida, they put in a new law saying any building over 3 stories had to have an inspection. So these homeowners association dues that were at probably somewhat minimum levels, they went back and said, okay, we're having an inspection. Things are probably going to have to get done. We need to go back and collect large homeowner association dues to make up for it, special assessments to make up for this. And so when these special assessments started coming through, people are on a fixed income, like, I can't do this. I don't have 25,000 to give you on a special assessment or 50,000. I was just accustomed to paying my homeowners association dues, and that was working for me. So the market got flooded between the insurance and then this new law. The apartment has really been flooded. The Florida market has gotten flooded with condos, and even a lot of the homes are having a hard time selling that are on golf courses that have required dues and things like this. So it's been impacting the communities, not all of them, but a lot of them have been impacted, the Boca area in particular, Naples. People are having a hard time selling their homes. The other interesting and fascinating statistic is in 2023, what was it? Like almost 50% of realtors, maybe
I think it was higher.
yeah, 40 to 50% in 2023 had only sold 1 or 0 homes. Last year in 2024, 71% of realtors did not sell 1 home. Like, let that sink in. That is not who you want listing your incoming resident's home. Because the fact is, as I said, so much has changed about selling real estate right now. It costs money to list a home. Professional pictures, the social media platforms, all of these platforms in which to effectively market that home cost money. If you're not selling any homes, you're not generating any income or revenue, so you're probably not going to want to invest in the resources necessary to properly market that home. So if an incoming resident chooses to list their home with one of those realtors that didn't sell any homes, chances are it's not going to get marketed properly. They're going to skimp on the pictures, and pictures are everything, because millennials sit at home and look at the pictures and swipe or give a heart, and then maybe two get hearts, and they're going to see those two homes. So if the pictures were crappy, they swiped on your home. And
Yeah.
they're going to see your home, and in addition to that, it's probably not getting the sort of marketing that needs to happen to get it out to the largest amount of people. So that's the other thing that's been happening right now. And even if it is a hot market, and they are probably going to get multiple offers, and those are becoming few and far between, it is still really important that that incoming resident gets two comparative market analysis from two full-time realtors that have their finger on the pulse of the market. Because what I've seen too happen is they put their house on the market and the realtor brings them a buyer the same day, maybe the realtor from the office or the same realtor that's selling it, and boom, it just sells for list price. And it's like, could that house have sold for a lot more? Do we even look, like, do we even know? Do we have that comparative market analysis from another realtor? We just want to make sure that they get all the equity they can out of their home. Because to your point, Debbie, for a lot of them, that's what's paying for their care going forward. A lot of them have a tremendous amount of equity in that home, and we want to make sure they maximize that equity so they have all the resources they need to continue to care for them. And as we all know, people are even living longer. So, a lot of times people haven't put enough away, thinking that they weren't going to live past 70, 75, and here they are 88 years old and in great shape.
And are you seeing, like, in those markets that you're working with families that maybe have an urgent need to move in, someone who needs care today, but they can't sell the house? And are there any solutions that your team works with?
Yeah, great question. So if people need immediate resources, we have a couple of programs. First of all, we have bridge loans, and those tend to be the best solution for the person that wants to move into a life plan community and wants to sell their home later for whatever reason, or their home isn't selling and they want to get in. We know it'll sell. It just is taking longer on the market. But we also have another program that I love. It's called the LivNow Market Ready program. It's a $50,000 unsecured loan that they can take out. It's based on FICO scores, and the interest rate is 7 to 12%. So it's a half of a credit card interest rate.
Yeah.
As long as they're putting their home on the market, they can take out this unsecured loan. They only pay interest on the money they use, and they can use that for up to the first 4 months of rent. So if somebody needs to get their parent into memory care right away or assisted living, the kids can take out that unsecured loan, use that to pay for it, and then get the home on the market. We can get the home on the market and get it sold quickly. And a lot of times, really, if you price the house right, it can sell. So we love the Live Now Market Ready program. They can also use it to fix up the house if maybe they want to do some things to their parents' house before they get it on the market, or the resident wants to do things to their house. They want to put on a $20,000 roof, whatever it is. That Live Now Market Ready program is one of my favorites. We also added another one that I absolutely love. I'm super excited about promoting this. It's called Helpful Heroes. They're local EMTs and firefighters that will go in and do handyman type services. So there's an app. This family will just go on the app. They say, I need gutters cleaned, and I need somebody to fix a back step for us, and I need this. A range will come in, a quote, and then the local EMTs and firefighters that are associated with Helpful Heroes will see that, and then they'll come back and say, you know what, I would charge this for it. I'd be interested in helping you with that project. It could be moving furniture, it could be a variety of things. We've been looking for these sort of handyman services for a while, but we never had a comfort level with who is going to go into the home. We've talked to a bunch of them, but we've never had a comfort level. Once we came across Helpful Heroes, who actually was on Shark Tank as Hydrant, Hydrant, I think it was. Once they were on Shark Tank, but once we found them, that completely removed our concern about who's going into the home, because it is those local EMTs and firefighters. So we know their background check, they're the best of the best. And we've had great success with that. We absolutely love it. And we've negotiated a 5% discount for our clientele that uses it. So
Wow, that is so cool. It's the first time I've ever heard of that.
yeah, we're excited about it. We're really excited to partner with them. It's a really cool thing. And actually, Elaine Smythe, who heads up our strategic partnership, she used it because she always tests our stuff before we actually get it out in the market. And she's like, I have my helpful hero coming back this weekend for the 4th time. She's using it. They're awesome. It's absolutely awesome.
I'm going to look at that. I've got this cabinet I've got to move downstairs, and I keep looking at it going, how the heck am I going to get that downstairs?
We'll give you the link so you can get a 5% discount. They can do it.
I would appreciate that. Well, Maureen, if people want to learn more about your services or connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
So they can go on our website, LivNow Relocation.com. They can also find us on LinkedIn, or they can reach out to me personally. It's MLongoria@LivNowRelocation.com. So any one of those ways they can reach pretty easily. If they go on our website, there's forms they can fill out to contact us, and we'll respond right away.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your senior living marketing perspectives with us, and we will see you soon. I know we'll see you at Smash.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you so much. I love your commitment to making sure that transition process goes smoothly, and it's a win for the incoming residents. They feel loved and cared for before they ever get there. You're making a huge difference, and we appreciate the partnership.
Thanks so much, Maureen.
Take care.